I don't mind having a lock on the outside, but he locked her in there. So he runs downstairs, takes off, running down the drive. He's running away home. So Mama opens up the window, and this is Mama. My Mama told me this story. So this is bona fide. And so she looks out the window. She sees him running down the Ton Drive. So she opens up the window. She hollers, "Ken, Florida, come back here right now." He just keeps on trucking. So she had to climb out on the roof and holler for him to come back. He wouldn't come back. So finally she started, in desperation, started screaming bloody murder and hollering for the neighbors. And finally one of the neighbors came out and said, "Todd, what are you doing up on the roof?" She said, "Ken is taking out, he has run away. Go get him. Don't worry about me, go get him." So I guess they found him. I guess they did. But I thought, how many times does God call for us and beg for us? And there's nobody loves us like God. Nobody loved my brother like my mama did. He would have listened. And I think about how many times God is begging us. He's out on the roof begging us to come home, pleading with us, and we just keep on running. So we're at chapter 9. Last week we finished up with them trying to kill Jesus. They're at the temple, and they've been having conversations, and they're at this point now that they're saying he's a blasphemer, he's a sinner, and they're going to stone him to death. So it's kind of odd that he's around the temple, and there had to have been who knows how many people around the temple there. So just all of a sudden he walks away, and they couldn't find him, and he escapes. And I think it was a miracle. I think it's miraculous that here he is around the temple, and he escapes. So that's where that gets us to where we are tonight, chapter 9. This is another, I think, really interesting chapter of the Bible. So, John is often known as, I grew up in the Baptist church, and anything the Baptists believe is faith. Believe in the Lord thy God, and thou shalt be saved. I mean, I've heard that from the time I was 0 to I was married to God. We even had, we had Sunday school, preaching, Sunday night, Wednesday night. Well, Baptists, back then anyway, we had Sunday school, we had preaching. On Sunday nights, we had training union. And then had preaching. And training union was to teach you what Southern Baptists believe. And so that was one of the things that was drilled into us in training union on Sunday nights was faith, belief. So the book is known as the book of belief. And we get toward the end of the book, it says, "So then many other signs Jesus also performed in the presence of the disciples, which are not written in this book. But these have been written so that you might believe that Jesus is Christ, the Son of God, and that by believing you may have life in his name." This is toward the very end of the book. It's also recognized as a book of unbelief. Why? And why is it important that we recognize that it is also a very important book on unbelief?
Jews unbelief.
Jews were unbelievers. And we need to recognize that people that don't believe like we do, to some extremes, get very angry with us. And we need to know that up front, when we're confronted, when we're trying to share the gospel with somebody, we need to know their background. And I think going through this chapter and going through John will help us to understand what it is, how to deal with somebody that doesn't believe like we do. Let's face it, most people don't believe like we believe. And if you don't believe that, you got to go out into the world and start trying to talk to people about the gospel. So it's really important. So let's watch Jesus, how he deals with the unbelievers. And these are people that knew the law of Moses. Think about that. Here's people that should have known he was coming. They should have recognized him. And this chapter here really points out that, everything pointed toward him being the Messiah, especially when we get toward the very end of this chapter. Especially when we get to the pool of Siloam. That is really interesting what takes place there. Okay. So, first one, and as Jesus, chapter 9, and as Jesus passed by, he saw a man who was blind from his birth. Now, he just escaped the crowd, and he's still here at the temple now, and all of a sudden he just so happens to run upon this guy, that's a blind man, and he's also, remember this, he was a beggar. That's important that we remember that too. Blind from birth, and a beggar. We find out he's a beggar several verses later. It was important that this took place like it did because it would establish that everybody there at the temple would know this man. He's a beggar. He's in the streets all the time. They've known him since a baby. And it's important that this takes place just like it does. Not a coincidence. So, and his disciples asked him, saying, Master, who had seen this man or his parents that he was born blind? We got to realize this is, the disciples are learning. You would think they would know that. If they read Ezekiel, man does not inherit the sin of his father. You might inherit the complications of the sins of your father. But you're not born in sin. They didn't recognize that. You notice that there wasn't another option here. Is he blind because he was a sinner, or was it something else? There was another option that they could only think, well, he must have been a sinner. That's why he's blind. And that was a universal opinion with the Jews at this time. But it all claimed the results of sin. And how could it be? Just thought he was born blind. If he would father had been a serial killer, maybe he would have been affected by the sins of his father. But he was not born blind because of sin. It's really interesting how Jesus is going to answer this. And as we read that, let me ask you this, see if this bothers you. Does anything about what's about to happen here bother you? Jesus answered, neither hath this man sinned, nor his parents. So he's not, you forget anything you've ever read about thinking you can inherit the sins of your father. That's got nothing to do with it. But that the works of God should be manifest in him. Is there anything about that that bothers you?
No.
Okay.
We're the clay.
Huh?
We're the clay.
Okay, we're the clay. It doesn't bother you that this man he was blind for one reason. If we go back and look at Isaiah, he said, my ways are not your ways.
I think probably what you're getting at is, in our minds, the way we express this a lot is we happen to be blind, but God's going to use that to show his glory. So kind of the way Jesus explains it is, this is the purpose.
Yeah. This is God's purpose for the day.
David said the same thing about Lazarus.
Yep.
He raised the dead.
And then you think about Job. Think about Job. He didn't sin. He had three sons. He had three friends came to him and said, "You need to repent." So this was done for God's own purpose. It may give us heartburn that this man had been blind for who knows how many years. But it's God's way. It was to serve God's purpose. So we need to see the hand of God here. There's a lot of things in the Bible we read that we don't, when 186,000 Syrians were killed, that's always bothered me. That's always bothered me. How could God just kill 186,000 people? this man to be blind for his purpose. Isaiah, remember though, did he suffer his sins? He didn't suffer because of his sins. Of course, he was a sinner, but he was all about God's purpose. All right, verse 4, I must work the works of him that sent me while it is day. The night cometh when no man can work. So, what is he saying here? I am the light of the world, and that night is coming. So what is he saying? I'm going to what? I'm going to die. Mike Dodson is all the time telling me, Dan, you got to get busy. Time's running out. Time's running out. Time's running out. And that's what Jesus is saying here. My time is running out. Night means his death. I must work the works of him that sent me while it is day. The night cometh when no man can work. Verse 5, as long as I am in the world, I am the light of the world. He's just like the sun. Everywhere, the sun is everywhere. The day will come when there will be no shadows. Look around the shadows in this room. The day will come when there will be no shadows. There will be total light. He is the light of the world. He is the bread. He is the living water. Now, to get to this guy. Another mystery. Let's read the verse. When he had thus spoken, he spat on the ground and made clay of the spittle, and he anointed the eyes of the blind man with the clay. If Richard Thompson is going to have surgery in Boston, I think it leaves April 28th, surgery the 29th. He'll be there at least 2 weeks. And what if I went to his house tonight and spat on the ground, got me some dirt, made some putty out of it and stuck it on his eyes? What would Richard probably say? You've lost your mind. That's the stupidest thing I've ever heard of. And here's a guy that's blind. Remember that. He's blind. And he's never seen anything. He's never seen anything. He doesn't know Jesus from Adam. This guy comes up.
Dan?
Yeah.
I mean, he did a lot of things for his purpose. He brought flavor on use him for his purpose. Okay. So would that happen for us today?
Oh, yeah.
He says, he's saying he's staying away.
He tells, he's pretty plain.
Was he lost? I mean, was he eternally lost?
He hardened his heart, didn't he? There's no way for us to understand God's ways. I always say Deuteronomy 29:29, where it says, secret things belong to God. But one day we'll know. Why did he use this method to heal?
The National Weather Service has issued a severe
What did he do? What other ways? Sometimes he laid on hands. Sometimes he just simply spoke, said, hey, they're 100 miles away. They're okay now. Sometimes did it different ways. Why? This time he uses clay. He spits on the ground, makes a little putty of mud, and puts on his eyes. So why did he use many different ways to heal people and to do miracles?
Because the power was in him, not just in the mud or this or this or that.
Okay. He could save anybody any way he wanted to do. The last thing he wanted to do was, what if he healed everybody with this mud?
People would have faith in the mud. They think the healing was in the mud.
Yeah. It's a trick. He's mastered this trick. And this trick is, we don't understand it, but it's in many different ways, on many different kinds of illnesses. It should have said to them that this is the Messiah.
And I think it has a lot to do with the faith of the person he's Some people came to him and had enough faith, said, just speak it. And they had enough faith to believe he could speak it.
We have no reason to believe that this guy had any faith at all. We don't know. Except later on, the way he reacts later on, how he responds to the Pharisees. But as far as we know, he didn't know Jesus, and he certainly never had seen him. He may have heard about him. But we don't know if he had faith or not.
Is it a little bit like when Moses was told to strike the rock one time and speak to the rock another time? He wanted to do like, oh, this worked before, but God varied it up a little bit.
We're going to get into another similar story here tonight, too, about the bitter water. That gets in here tonight. So, physical blindness is when a person is unable to see due to the corruption of the eye, either by disease or deformity or accident or whatever. On the other hand, spiritual blindness is when a person, due to the corruption of the mind, loses sight of the truth. And that's what it always boils down to, is running away from the truth. The person who no longer follows the path of truth is in the dark. He's blind. So, and said unto him, go wash in the pool of Siloam, which is by interpretation sin. That's very important. He went his way, therefore, and washed and came seeing. Okay. Now, here's a picture of the temple. Now, they are, I hit the wrong one. Anyway, while he's fixing that, up here is where they were. This is the temple. So they were somewhere around here. And when he sees this guy, he's escaped. He's gone out here, run into this guy. He puts clay on him, and then they're somewhere right in here. And he tells him, go down here. The pool of Siloam. The pool of Bethesda is right here. And we've already talked about the pool of Bethesda. Why in the world would he send this blind man all the way down here? I like that answer. Okay. So only a couple hundred feet to the north, just outside the northern wall of the Temple Mount, were the pools of Bethesda, which was a relatively short, flat wall. But Jesus didn't send him to the pool of Bethesda. Instead, he said, go wash in the pool of Siloam, which was 5 times further away, down to the lowest part of the truth, all the way down to the bottom. All right. For a blind guy, that was a long way to go, especially since the pool of Bethesda were close by. So why did he send him down there? Well, as the scripture points out, the pool of Siloam's name in Hebrew means the pool of the one who will be sent. You see where this is going? Which, of course, is the Messiah. The pool of the one who will be sent. The Jews regard this pool as prophetic of the Messiah during pouring water from the desert. Y'all remember this story? Exodus 15 says Moses led the people out of Israel away from the Red Sea, and they moved out to the desert. Sure. They traveled in the desert for 3 days without finding water. They got pretty upset. When they came to the oasis of Marah, the water was too bitter to drink, so they called the place Marah. And the people complained and turned against Moses. What are we going to drink? And they demanded. So Moses cried out to the Lord for help, and the Lord showed him a piece of wood. Moses threw it into the water and made the water good to drink. So that's what they're talking about there. So here's a picture of that. I'm going to get a name. We got a woman that did this. Okay. So the pool of Siloam was also symbolic of the Messiah pouring out the Holy Spirit on the Jews. The blind beggar was told to go to the Messiah's pool to be healed. The name of this specific location the blind beggar was told to go to in order to be healed would not be missed by the Pharisees. The Pharisees see what's going on there. He is sent down there to be healed in this pool, this sacred pool. here's what they do. But there's a more to the story. Each fall, the Jews celebrate the Feast of Tabernacles. Remember, we studied that not too long ago, the Feast of Tabernacles, the Feast of the Tents. The last day of this feast is called the Great Day of the Feast. On this day, the priest would perform a special ritual in which the nation would cry out for their Messiah to come. You see what's happening here? This big, they're having the Feast of Tabernacles. It was a big feast. Everybody came, stayed for a whole week. And now they're going on the last day. There's this big ceremony. They're going to have this really, really big deal, big party. Here we go. Beginning at the temple located at the top of the Moriah, the high priest would lead a long line of priests as they sang their way down a wide descending boulevard to the pool of Siloam located at the bottom of Mount Moriah. At the pool, the high priest would fill a special pitcher with water with great pomp and ceremony. When me and Matthew got to go to Europe, one of the places we were going to go see was Notre Dame. And we were promised we were going to go into the church and everything, this big, beautiful building. And it was just back before it burned. And we get there, and we all got on the bus, we were all kind of excited. It's a big deal to see this place. And we get out, and we're about to go in. And they run out there, and they stop us. And they said, you can't go in today. And so the our guide, he got real upset. They said, well, believe it or not, what you're about to see is even more miraculous than going inside the building. They had some guy that was going to be made a cardinal or something like that. Somebody was getting a promotion. In about 15 or 20 minutes, here comes all these people, all these men, and all this garb, and you've never seen such pomp in your life. I mean, it was fantastic. But I don't know, it's probably 100 cardinals or bishops or whatever these guys are called, in every kind of color you can think of. And you've never seen such a ceremony in your life. And they came in, we got to sit there and watch all of this. And when I read this, that's what I thought. Wow, this was a big, big deal. At the pool, the high priest would fill a special pitcher of water with great pomp and ceremony. The high priest would then take the long climb back to the boulevard, to the temple at the top of Mount Moriah. You just see them there marching up there. Can you imagine the guy that got the hold, the pitcher? He was really somebody. So, he then would take the pitcher of water to the brazen altar of sacrifice and pour the water on it while reading Isaiah 44:3 about the future Messiah coming to Israel. He was there right then. For I will pour out my water on the thirsty land, streams on the dry ground. I will pour out my spirit on your offspring, and my blessing on your descendants. Isaiah 44. The crowd would fall silent as they prayed for the Messiah to come and pour out his spirit on them. But this particular year, Jesus had come stealthily, it's a hard word to say, to Jerusalem without his apostles. And it was at this moment he boldly broke the prayerful silence by loudly proclaiming, if anyone is thirsty, let him come to me and drink. Who believes in me, as the scripture said, from his innermost being will flow rivers of living water. This is first back to John 7. Jesus has answered their cry for the Messiah to come. The prophetic ritual of pouring the water from the pool of the one who is sent and praying for the Messiah had been answered. He has come. The thing that they've been celebrating for who knows how many years, every year, the Feast of Tabernacles, they would go down and go through this ritual, praying that the Messiah would come. And he comes, he's there looking at them. And look what happens now. All right, the neighbors, therefore, neighbors before him had seen him, that he was blind, said, is not this he that sat and begged? Everybody knew who he was. They knew the blind beggar. Been there since he was a kid, probably. This was just validating everything that had occurred. The people could not deny this. So, some said, this is he. Others said, well, he looks kind of like him. But he said, I'm he. I'm him. They're sitting there talking about him. He said, hey, it's me. Therefore they said to him, how were thine eyes open? He answers to the man that is called Jesus, made clay, and anointed my eyes, and said to me, go to the pool of Siloam and wash. And I went and washed, and I received sight. They said to him, to me, this is the dumbest thing I've ever heard anybody ask. Where is he? This man had never seen him before in his life. This man was blind till a few minutes ago, and they're asking him, where is he? And he's thinking, where is where? You know, I've been blind. Where is where? I don't know. He said, I know not. They brought the Pharisees to him, and that before time was blind. They did establish the Jews Jesus of having violated the Sabbath, and not as they ought to be, examining the evidence that he was from God. They should have been saying, are you really able to say? They should have been saying, who is this guy? How in the world could he have done it? How? They're asking all the wrong questions. And it was the Sabbath day when Jesus made the clay and opened his eyes. And that was, I'm sure, deliberate too. He's already told us, he's Lord over the Sabbath. He has all authority. He can do whatever he wants to do any day of the week, especially when it comes to doing good. Again, the Pharisees also asked him how he had received his sight. He said it to them. He put clay in my eyes. I washed and do cease. He's having to repeat himself. But, oh no. Don't do it again. Oh no.
What do you do, Daniel?
Maybe it'll come back.
Gotta read it.
All right. But just think about this now. They're asking, where is he? And he's sitting there and never. That's what I thought it was so funny when he asked him that. He sat there and looked at him like, I did bring my Bible. We need to. Man, we got a breaker down the right.
It's probably going to be 3-4 minutes yet. So.
All right.
Start out with it, brother.
What verse is on? I can read it. Let's see. Okay, verse 12 said, and he said to him, where is he? He said, I do not know. They brought to the Pharisees him who was formerly blind. Now it was the Sabbath on the day that Jesus made the clay and opened his eyes. And this is the thing that they're really attacking for. It's not that they consider him taking the clay and making this putty an act of work. This is what they're going to try to nail on. You did work on the Sabbath, and that's what they consider. They consider work, and you can't do that on the Sabbath. Now it's the Sabbath on the day when Jesus made the clay and opened his eyes. In verse 15, again, therefore, the Pharisees also were asking him how he received his sight. And he said to them, he applied clay to my eyes, and I washed, and I see. Therefore, some of the Pharisees were saying, this man is not from God because he does not keep the Sabbath. And they say, you're not keeping the Sabbath because you're working. You don't work. I was reading one thing, it was ridiculous what they could not do on the Sabbath. If you were caught doing anything on the Sabbath, what happened to you? What would they do to you? Where were you barred from? Yeah, they couldn't go to the synagogue. They couldn't go to the temple. And depending on how severe the violation was, as to how long you would be kept from going to the temple. I think the minimum was like 30 days, and depending on what the violation was, as to how many days you would be barred from going to the temple. And then you became an outcast. And that was the last thing you wanted to be, was an outcast. And we're going to see that here in just a minute. We get a little bit further along. Should be around 270 or something like that. We're going past that. Yeah, that's all I said.
Here it is.
Okay, 16. Therefore, some of the Pharisees, this man is not of God, because he keepeth not the Sabbath day. Others said, how can a man that is a sinner do such miracles? And there was a division among them. So, some of them say, hey, this must be the Messiah. Some say, it cannot be the Messiah. He breaks the Sabbath. We judge him by his works. He healed on the Sabbath. He's an imposter. Last thing here is we often assume own interpretations of the Scriptures to be infallible, and then judge and condemn all others by those interpretations. Dangerous ground beyond. When you see somebody, it's kind of like when the apostles saw the guys and said, hey, these guys are doing this and that. Do you want us to stop them? He said, no, they're not against us, they're for us. Here we go. And they said unto the blind man again, what sayest thou of him that he hath opened thine eyes? He said, well, here's a blind man now. He's been blind all his life. And you're asking me, how did he do this? He couldn't even see the process that Jesus went through to do this. All he knows is he stuck some mud on his eyes. So it's a noble confession made by the man who was healed in the face of the moods of the people. I mean, you got to remember, he knows all the rules. This man, he may have been blind, but he knew all the rules. And he knew they were trying to trap Jesus. I think it's obvious. So he wasn't afraid. The hating had given him the main courage to speak truthfully, and we should never be ashamed of that either. So verse 18. But the Jews did not believe concerning him that he had been blind. Can you believe that? And received his sight until they called the parents of him that had received his sight. And they asked him, saying, is this your son, who you say was born blind? How then doth he now see? His parents answered them and said, we know not. We know that this is our son, and that he was born blind. But they're not going to touch. They're not going to touch how he was healed. Why?
Fear.
Yeah. The Pharisees proposed three questions to the parents, by which they hoped to convict the man falsely. Was he the son? Was he born blind? And how was he healed? The third one they didn't dare answer. Even if they knew. By what means he now seeth? We know not, or who hath opened his eyes. We know not. He is of age. Ask him, he shall speak for himself. They've thrown their own son under the bus. That's the only way I can see that. Here's his parents. Not only that, he'd been a beggar. If you had a blind child, would you allow him to beg? I've seen a lot of that in Honduras. I've seen a lot of that. Family have a child. If you've been in a third world country and there's a child that's been just deformed or something wrong with them, the family will live off of that. I've seen it over and over and over again. And it's wrong. It's bad. It's not healthy. So these words spake his parents because they feared the Jews. For the Jews had agreed already that if any man did confess that he was Christ, he should be put out of the synagogue. The word is already out. Therefore said his parents, he is of age, ask him. Then again called they this man that was blind and said unto him, give God the praise. We know that this man is a sinner. Give God the praise. Where have we heard that before? Right here. Joshua 7:19. Joshua said to Achan, my son, give glory to the Lord, the God of Israel, and honor him. Tell me what you've done. Do not hide it from me. So he's pressuring the man to fess up. What had Achan done? He stole the gold and silver and hid it. Sad part is, if they had believed in Jesus, they no longer would have been blind. Really sad. He answered and said, whether he be a sinner or no, I know not. One thing I know, where I was blind, now I see. Probably one of the most famous persons in the whole Bible. I was blind, but now I see. The proper way in religion is to first inquire into that facts and then account for them as we can. We must all say, I was in darkness, but now I'm brought to the light of truth. He only spoke what he knew. We need to do the same and no more. This said they to him, what did he to thee? How opened he thine eyes? He answered them, I've told you already, and you did not hear. He's getting pretty brave, isn't he? These guys had the power to do anything they wanted to him. And here he is, he's finally able to see, and now he's getting threatened by the rulers of the land. Wherefore, will you hear it again? Will you also be his disciples? I mean, he really puts them in their place. He turns this completely around. He's steady to his testimonies. That's what we should do. Then they reviled him and said, thou art his disciple, but we are Moses' disciples. They weren't either one. They weren't Moses' disciples and they weren't God's disciples. Reviled means to criticize in an abusive or angrily insulting manner. Whenever somebody is getting out-talked, what do? This is exactly what they do. When they realize they're losing the conversation, the debate, then they just act ugly. And that's what they do here. They just act ugly. It'd be interesting to know exactly what they said. Now we know that God spoke unto Moses. As for this fellow, we know not from whence he is. The word fellow here implies contempt. They knew where he was from, which explains their contempt. They knew where Jesus was from. Nothing good comes from there, does it? That was well known amongst the Jews, the proud Jews. The man answered and said unto him, why herein is a marvelous thing that you know not from whence he is, and yet you have opened mine eyes. Y'all cannot understand this. You can't understand what he did. What he did was a miracle. Nothing short of a miracle. And if he can perform a miracle, he has to be from God. He has to be sent from God. Now we know that God heareth not sinners, but if any man be a worshiper of God and doeth his will, him he heareth. God only answers those who do his will. Thus this man has to be from God. 32. Now, since the world began, was it not heard that any man opened the eyes of one that was born blind? So, from the beginning of time until now, has anybody ever healed a blind man? It wasn't until 1728 that Dr. Chelsea Selden surgically removed the cataract. And so he's saying, since the beginning of time, nobody's ever healed a blind man. You know he's blind. You know he's healed. man were not of God, he could do nothing. The fact that Jesus could perform miracles like this was full proof that he was commissioned by God, proof that never has been and never can be refuted. The angel had said of him, thou wast altogether born in sin, and dost thou teach us? And they cast him out. So now they're saying, you were born in sin. You were born blind because you were a sinner. And to me, that's the most ridiculous thing anybody can say. So they cast him out. Who knows what happened to that guy? Who knows what? I'm sure he wasn't allowed to go to the temple. But they couldn't punish him. Because they knew if they punished him, everybody knew this was a blind man, everybody knew he could see. Or they couldn't put him in jail or anything. So Jesus heard that they had cast him out. And when he had found him, just so happened Jesus knows exactly where this guy is, runs it down, hundreds, maybe thousands of people around there. They're all going to stone Jesus. They had just been talking to this guy, and now all of a sudden, Jesus is talking to this guy again. And where are these guys that's going to stone him? Jesus heard that they had cast him out, and when he had found him, he said to him, dost thou believe on the Son of God? He answered and said, who is he, Lord, that I might believe on him? You got to remember, he'd never seen Jesus, even up until now, as far as we know. He was sent down to the pool of Siloam to wash his eyes off, and as far as we know, Jesus wasn't there. So when Jesus is speaking to him now, I guess maybe recognized his voice. He answered and said, who is he, Lord, that I might believe on him? And Jesus said to him, thou hast both seen him, and it is he that talketh with thee. Reminds me of, when the woman at the well found out she had seen the Messiah, how excited, she got. And he said, Lord, I believe, and he worshiped. This was I believe, it's an overwhelming expression. What do we ask people before they're baptized? They believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God. That's the question we always ask. When our spiritual eyes have been opened, we're permitted to see the glories of Heavenly Father. Wow. All right, and Jesus said, for judgment I am come into this world, that they which see not might see, and they which see might be made blind. What is he? That sounds contradictory there. What is he saying?
Talk about Jews again.
Huh?
Talking about the Jews again.
Yeah. They think they can see, and yet they're blind. I'm here to make those who think they can see realize that they are blind. And the ones that are blind to sin might see the light. But those that are arrogant and think they know, when they don't, he says, I'm going to make them see they're blind. And some of the Pharisees which were with him heard these words and said unto him, are we blind also? So the Pharisees had found him. Why didn't they start stoning him then? God didn't want them to. God wouldn't allow them to. That's the only thing I can think of. They tried to let him down. He escaped. And now he's here again. They're here again. They found him. And Jesus said to them, if ye were blind, you should have no sin. But now you say, we see, therefore your sin remaineth. You think you know, but you don't. Your sin's still with you. If you're truly blind by ignorance of the truth, then you have not sinned. We don't know the truth. We can't sin, we don't know the truth. But when you have shown the truth and rejected it, you have sinned. I think I just heard thunder. They have been shown. TNT, I'm going to stop right there, Vince. The weather is right on top of us. Maybe we can get home for tonight. It's really bad. We'll start with chapter 10. And next week, we're going to talk about the good